Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to this webinar on the EB3 program, Living the Dream in the USA. Sounds like a good old Bruce Springsteen track to me. I know that was Born in the USA. Anyway, my name is Robin Thornton. I'm joined here by Ed Harris, who will shortly be running through some of the slides. We will crack on. So this is the EB3 program, which is an employment-based immigration into the US. So first of all, Ed, do you want to do a quick intro on yourself and I'll follow on?
Oh, okay. Yes, so I'm Ed Harris. I'm managing partner at Holborn with responsibility for the Americas. I live in Portugal at the moment, but a few years ago I was living in the US. I lived there for 3 years. I went through the green card application process myself a few years ago. And prior to that, I lived and worked in Hong Kong for 10 years. So plenty of experience internationally, working in wealth management and more recently in the citizenship and residency side of Holborn.
All right. Thank you very much. And myself, Robin Thornton, I'm a chartered financial planner, qualified in the UK and also in the US as well. So I work quite closely with Edward with kind of cross-border tax planning issues and wealth management, and obviously on the residency and citizenship, because that comes into some of the estate planning and tax planning that people are looking to do. And I live in Spain, actually, southern Spain, so I get involved in these kind of cross-border issues of lots of migration backwards and forwards. So today, what we're going to do, we're going to keep this pretty short and sweet. So you can anticipate probably 20-25 minutes, depending on how many questions we've got. But I'll just explain to you a little bit about Holborn Assets and Holborn Pass. Apologies for probably some of you have been on these calls before. We do these on a regular basis every Wednesday, same time, on a different topic. So I'll run through who we are, who Holborn Pass is, and then we're going to go through into the residency and citizenship options. Edward's going to run through that, and then the actual EB3 program. So it's a great program, and it's really targeted and easy to get on board, and yeah, some real positives about the EB3. So if you are interested, definitely you need to hang on and go through that, and the process and benefits, and obviously any Q&As that we've got at the end. We've got a number of questions that have come in already on the pre-registration. So who are we? Holborn Assets, global wealth management company, offices all over the world, anywhere you can think that there are expats, pretty much, from UK, Spain, Portugal, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Africa, etc. And we look after about 20,000 or so clients. We manage, I think the last measure was about $2.5 billion worth of client funds. So that would be traditional wealth management. And really what's happened over the years, particularly I guess since COVID, maybe even the Ukraine issues, people have suddenly looking for plan B. So Holborn Pass has grown and grown and grown, and that's our global citizenship and mobility benefits division, who Edward and I both work within. It's become extremely busy, and we've done over 1,000 plus applicants. In fact, even this year alone, I think we've done about 400-500 because it's been exceptionally busy. So what we do, and kind of why Holborn, I guess. Well, first of all, you've got this traditional wealth management background. So we're looking at investments and numbers and return, as well as, is it tying in, is it bespoke for the client? But pretty much we do a lot of the donkey work for you. We are acting on your behalf on a lot of occasions. We're providing that advice. We're providing the service and support. For example, how to get your documents processed. Where can I get my criminal record check? Do I need a a certain stamp on it. So we've got a team in the Middle East of about 12, I think it's 12, maybe 14 people. They do this all day long. So they know that if you are in Dubai and you want an EB3 and your application needs a criminal record check, they'll be able to tell you where to get it from. So depending on the type of program, whether you need a bank account open, you need to file an annual tax return, you need your green card if it's the US, you need your residencia if it's Spain, if it's Dubai, you need your Emirates ID. So it's all those kind of things, and getting those numbers, whether it's social security numbers or whatever, which obviously would go towards your application for citizenship. So this is Edward, do you want to do this bit or?
Sure. Yeah, I kind of throw this slide up, not to go through line by line, but just to give that bigger picture of we're not just an EB3 company, or not just an EB5 company, or not just a Portugal Golden Visa company. We have about 22 programs that we offer around the world, of which this is a selection of some of the most popular ones. So, it may well be that although we do these webinars and this one's happens to be on EB3, often we'll talk to people who've inquired to us perhaps about a Spanish Golden Visa, and actually it turns out that Greece or St. Lucia might actually be a better solution for what it is that they're trying to achieve. So it's just to give that sort of bigger picture in terms of the size and the breadth of the experience, the knowledge, the relationships that we have. And now sort of following on from that previous slide, for each of these programs, there are multiple parties involved. There's typically, you've got government agencies and departments. You have lawyers, immigration lawyers, perhaps you've got property developers, banks. There's lots of parties involved. And part of our job is to pull all that together into a streamlined solution for our clients. And that's what we do across all these different programs. So with that sort of background then, let's talk a little bit then about what EB3 is, because obviously that's the subject for today. So as Rob mentioned at the beginning, it's an employment-based immigration route, which is quite different from most of the other stuff that we do. Most of the stuff we do is investment-based. So you're buying a property, you're investing in government bonds, starting up businesses, those types of things that involve some level of investment, whereas this is purely an employment-based route. And it allows not just the applicant, but the applicant's spouse, so husband, wife, unmarried children under 21, to get permanent residency to the US. Colloquially, most people know permanent residency as meaning a green card to the USA. In order to do so, the applicant must have a full-time, non-seasonal job offer. And the employer who is going to be sponsoring the applicant as part of that process has to apply to the US Department of Labor and be able to show to them and complete a lot of paperwork to say that we will be around for a long time. We need this employment. We can't find this employment elsewhere within the US. There's a whole sort of piece of work to be done as to justify why they need to bring in somebody from outside of the US to come in and do this job. So again, we are pulling all this stuff together. We will source and find the jobs for applicants. You'll understand what the job is before you get too far down the process. We'll be working with the employer to make sure that that's done, the certificates are achieved. So again, this is a complete solution that we're presenting to our clients. But the key message from this is not any job will do. You can't, just find yourself a job in the States. Because as we'll talk about in a minute, the application process timeline is in excess of a year. So over a year from deciding you want to do this and starting it to getting your green card and being ready to go. And the US Department of Labor wants to know that that job is still going to be there in over a year's time, because they know the timescales as well. So it's very important that you're working with a company that's experienced in EB3 and employers that are experienced with bringing people into EB3. And then know not just how to complete the paperwork, but how to work well with the Department of Labor to get those approved. So key features, is there any minimum asset or net worth? So again, as I mentioned, a lot of stuff that we do, you have to be able to demonstrate a certain amount of assets or investment that you're going to make in the country. Actually, with the EB3 visa, There is no test or requirement for this. All you need to be able to do is cover the costs of applying for the visa, and we advise clients to have a little bit of extra money to cover, the costs of moving to the US, putting a deposit down on an apartment, maybe buying a car if you need to get around. Just some of those initial setup costs until your salary from your job starts getting paid. So really, you're talking about somewhere in that sort of 60 to 70,000 US dollar range for all the fees and your initial costs of getting there and getting set up. You don't need to have any special educational background. As I mentioned, this is an employment-based role, so no need to have a university education or a degree related to the job that you're going to be doing. You don't even have to have any relevant work experience. So again, simple and therefore means that most people will qualify. You do have to have some basic English. There is a sort of interview process where basically you'll record, or we help you record a little video that goes to the employer when you're getting your job sorted. But basic English only is required. You have to have a clean criminal background check. So the country in which you're living, UAE police, if you're in Dubai, will do a criminal background check on you and provide a certificate to say that that's clean. You have to have a clean drugs test. And ultimately just be willing to work for the sponsor of the employer. So really those last three are the only sort of qualifying features that there are for EB3. Speak some basic English, have a clean criminal background check and a clean drugs test, and be willing to do some work. As long as you've got that and you have the funds mentioned above, then EB3 visa is something that you're going to qualify for and would be available to you. So I mentioned, work for a sponsor employer. What type of jobs are we talking about? So these are some examples of some of the jobs that we've had clients go through. Typically, you're talking about jobs that are working in warehouses, on production lines, doing relatively simple, straightforward, which is why no specialist sort of knowledge or education is required, but simple jobs. There's a number of different locations available around the US. I picked out Indiana as one of those locations, so more in the northeast side of the US. These wages actually have gone up a little bit since then, but these are key thing I want to get across here. These are proper jobs. This isn't, part of the reason why the US wants to attract EB3 people in is because they want legal immigrants coming in to do these jobs, not illegal immigrants doing them. So these are proper jobs with, all the rights and responsibilities that any American would have in doing these jobs. Because at the time when you are starting it, you will have your US green card already. It's not a conditional green card. You'll have the same rights as any other American going to do this type of job. So proper jobs with a decent wage, full-time, permanent jobs. They come with medical insurance after a qualifying period of 30 days. So long as you've done your first month's work there, then you start to get medical insurance cover as well. And all the sort of typical jobs. I'm not going to go through line by line, but I think you get an idea of these are the types of jobs that they're looking to try and fill. They're now struggling to fill with legal workers in the UK, in the US, and therefore wanting to attract in people with clean criminal backgrounds, clean drug tests to come and do this type of work. So with that in mind, a little bit of sort of background in terms of the process. And I'm not necessarily going to go through this line by line, but there is a start point in which case you say, okay, Edward, Robin, I want to do this. We have the funds. I can get a clean criminal background check. I can meet those sort of limited requirements. And these are the things that we're going to help you through along the way. Applying for the labor certificates, dealing with the US immigration, sorting out the visa fees, submitting all these other points along the way. Traditionally, this process has taken, in fact, I would say almost 2.5 years is probably a bit optimistic. It was typically more like a 3 or 4 year process to do EB3. However, more recently, they have brought in something called premium processing, where for a small extra fee, which is included already in our illustrations, you can get premium processing, and that timeline comes down from 2.5+ years to about 18 months, 1.5 years. Most of that is the work at the beginning with the Department of Labor, getting that certificate together, and then waiting for the invitation letter to come from your local consulate. But it's realistic to assume that from applying to having the green card in your hand and the ability to get on a plane and move you, and if you want, your spouse and your dependent children to the US, you're talking about an 18-month time frame, which for the US standards is about as quick as it gets. I did my green card through marriage. My wife's American. Even though I was married to an American, I had a child with an American, it still took me over 2 years to get my green card approved. So this is really about as quick as it gets. So just running through some of the sort of features of EB3 and why it is so attractive. It is a permanent green card that you get. So it's giving you and your family the ability to live and work in the US permanently. And as I mentioned, it's spouse and unmarried children under the age of 21, and they all get a green card. So, it could well be that perhaps husband goes and does the job in the warehouse, the wife has a green card, she can go and get any job to go off and work elsewhere. Or maybe the wife does the job that qualifies for the EB3 and the husband goes off and gets another job somewhere else. There's no restrictions to the green cards, so full right to work. Kids can go to, get educated, medical cover, all the other sort of stuff that comes with that. And after 5 years of being resident in the US, your family and you can then apply for American citizenship. So there is a route to getting a US passport through this process as well. As I mentioned, it's pretty much open to anyone as long as you speak some basic English and you're willing to do the work and you have a clean criminal background check and the drugs test, then it is open to anyone. There's no financial test, there's no educational test. Also, as I mentioned, there is this option for fast processing, taking it to about 18 months. And if you compare that with EB5, which is sort of one of the sort of widely talked about and widely marketed investment routes to getting a US green card, EB5 takes 2 or 3 years to get a provisional green card, and to get the full green card that you're getting here, it takes about 6 years. So this is a substantially quicker way of doing it. And the cost is about $45,000 for sole applicants. EB5 is the investment route is $900,000. And that $45,000 is broken into installments over that 18-month period. Again, to try and make it more accessible for applicants. So $20,000 at the beginning, that gets the immigration lawyers involved and the employer involved, and we start that process. And then there's sort of interim payment of $15,000 when we get to a certain road mark, and $10,000 at the end as the green cards are being delivered. You can add family members, as I mentioned. There is a sort of small additional cost of $3,000 for each of those, adding in family members to cover the extra work that's required in doing that. As I say, as part of our solution for clients, that initial employment is already arranged. It's full medical cover. As I say, these are proper jobs, full legal protection. If for some reason the job isn't satisfactory or the work conditions aren't correct, you're not happy with it, you can quit the job and go and get a job elsewhere. So, we are anticipating that people do these jobs. We've often found with clients that have gone through that they quite quickly get promoted. We had actually a client that come through who was working, a lady actually was working in a production line. She happened to be a trained accountant from elsewhere in the world. She mentioned it to her bosses there, and then was quickly moved out of the production line and into the back office, and was given a job in the accountancy department for the company. So there's no requirement to particularly stay in this job for a long period of time, but the initial employment has been arranged, and say it's good wages with full medical cover and full legal protection. So these are proper jobs. So applicants need not be concerned that they're going to be put in a position where they're taken advantage of in some way. So you have a green card. As far as the US is concerned, you have all the legal protection that comes with that. So that, I think, is the sort of outline that I wanted to go through in terms of how EB3 work. So it's a relatively simple, straightforward program. Very few conditions that limit the people that can apply, and quite a straightforward process to go through once you have decided to apply. So I think probably at this stage, I've already talked for sort of 15-20 minutes, Robin. Are there some questions that have come in? I've seen a couple of things pop up on screen.
Yeah, I just answered one from a gentleman as well, asking about the difference between EB3 and EB5, which is better. They're actually very similar programs, aren't they? The difference, I guess, one is investment, larger capital sum, which is the EB5, but the fees on that alone are pretty substantial.
Yeah. So EB5 tends to appeal to people that are not looking to imminently move to the US, partly because the timescales involved are a lot longer. But yeah, that is an investment-based qualification and a substantial investment. I mean, with the fees included, you're talking about anywhere upwards of $900,000 US. Quite different sort of programs from the investment level perspective. But ultimately, both give you the same green card, and in fact, when you get your green card for EB3, you get a full permanent green card. When you do it through EB5, you get a temporary green card to start off with until such time you've held your investment for typically 5 years, 5 to 6 years, and then you apply to have the restrictions removed. So in terms of getting a full green card, it's actually quicker to do it through EB3, even though the investment level is substantially lower.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of other questions, which I think you pretty much covered. He was talking about processing time. So we're talking the fast track is about 1.5 years. Another gentleman asking if he can add his children, which I think you've covered as well. And
so children under the age of 21 can be included. That's correct.
Yeah. What about dependent? I've got a question here about dependent parents. I know some of the other programs around the world you can add parents over the age of a certain age, like 65 or whatever. What about this? What about EB3?
Not dependent parents for the EB3. The EB5 does.
Okay, so that's probably one of the big differences. But then you need to have.
I would say once you have over a 5-year period, you can apply for citizenship. At the point in time you have citizenship, at that point you would be able to petition to have dependent parents come and join you. So there would ultimately be a route anyway.
Okay, that's a good point, which we didn't really cover, and another gentleman's asked it. So I get my EB3 green card, as it's called, so colloquially. I'm there doing my job. After 5 years, I can apply for US citizenship. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Yeah, after 5 years of residence in the US, you can apply to be a US citizen. And again, just to mention, you don't need to have done this job for 5 years. You just need to have been a normal, upstanding member of the American community and lived in the States. You do this job for 6 months or a year. You get offered a better job somewhere else. You have a green card. You can go and take any other job. You don't need, at that point, you don't need the Department of Labor or anybody else to be involved. You're sort of free. If you want to go and set up your own business in the States, you can go and do that as well.
And there's tons of opportunity, isn't it? I mean, unemployment's extremely low. It's it's still a booming economy, whatever everybody says around the world, and there's a major shortage of people. Full stop.
Correct. Yes. Absolutely. Obviously, from our investment side of our business, it's very difficult for US companies to find good, hardworking people at the moment. Hence the popularity of schemes like this. So there's every opportunity for people once they're there and they've worked for a while, if they want to look around and find other opportunities. And as I mentioned, if you go in there as a husband and wife, then one of them does the job that we've initially put on the application for their green cards. There's nothing stopping the other one from going off and getting a job if they're a nurse or a doctor or a teacher, or want to work in frankly speaking, any job in the US. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah. So another gentleman's just asked a question here live that it looks like he's in IT, for example. So with the EB3 program, you could take the job that's on offer as long as you stay there for a year. He could then end up working for Google, Microsoft, or whoever it is that's hiring.
That's correct. Yeah, it's important that that when people come, so if they've accepted a job offer and come to the US, that they at least spend some time doing the job that was on their application for their entry into the US. But they're not tied to that job long term. So if they did it for a period of time, but actually they were skilled and had other things to offer, accountancy, IT, or whatever it happens to be, and they then want to go off and pursue that when they found another role, then there is no restriction on doing so. They have a permanent green card at that point.
Happy days, yeah. Okay, and then just to follow up and finish off, I guess if anybody on the call tonight has got any questions, obviously this is quite I wouldn't say bespoke necessarily, but it's down to each individual person. Our contact details, Edward's contact details, are on their email address. Obviously, the invite and everything else, you can contact Holborn. But obviously, we're specialists on this side of the pond, should we say, on that program. So, unless you've got anything else to add, Edward, I think we'll wrap that up.
I think just echoing that U.S. immigration is a very complicated process. If you get one line wrong on a form, it'll take them 8 months to come back to you and tell you it's wrong, and then you're starting again. So it's not something you want to be doing on your own. We are extremely experienced in this. We work with top quality immigration lawyers. It's something that, if this is something that you're interested in, then get in touch with us. There's lots of different options out there in terms of the employment. Find something that's most suitable for you, and then help you through all those stages of that process. So very, very happy to hear from people after the webinar.
Have a good evening. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.